Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Spurs Kings TV. You're watching the Monday pitch. I'm Mitch, and Marlon is not about this evening, so you're going to have to deal with me as a host. Let's get straight to it. Bring out our panelists. I'm going to start with a guy whose team's picked 4 points up this week and pulled themselves off the bottom of the championship. Sink, how you feeling?
a little bit better, not great, but a little bit better.
Mate, it's improvements, mate, on the up.
That's it. You just got to take every positive way you can get them right now. So yeah, on the up. That's all you can hope for. Only way is up.
Yeah, fair enough, fair enough. We have still got a Spurs fan on the panel, bringing in our resident ref. We've got Chris. How's it going, mate? You all right?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, mate. Not too bad. I'm trying to recover from the worst possible FA Cup draw that Spurs could have had. I reckon. But we'll get onto that later,
Yeah,
maybe.
we'll get onto that in a little while. And on to Stocky, who's probably a little less happy than he was last week after this weekend's result. How's it going, mate?
Yeah, I'm not bad. I'll save all the Arsenal rage.
Really?
Yeah, we'll get to it shortly.
We actually got a smile out of you last week, mate.
That's all right. That's all right. Once I'm tell you how happy I'm about Gabriel getting punched in the head, I'll cheer up again.
Right, so let's quickly move on to the first topic of the evening: Tottenham and Aston Villa. Why so inconsistent? This hasn't worked at all. 1 second, let me rejig what's going on here. Might as well start with you, Stocks. You're first on the scene, so let's go with it.
All right. Well, I won't going to get too much into the Tottenham inconsistencies because I reckon Chris can definitely handle that much more astutely than I can. But I was having a look into Villa's recent form, and I don't know. I get a feeling it could be a little bit of second season syndrome. Like I think it feels like teams are more accustomed to how they want to play,
Okay.
and sometimes I don't know. It's just I think last season they really were excellent and a breath of fresh air. Sorry, and it's just hard to repeat it. I mean, so like in the last, I always assumed last season they were pretty good at the back, but in the last 4 games they've conceded 11 goals, which ain't really like Champions League contenders form. And I think they might be caught out a bit with a bit of a thin squad in with Champions League load as well, because they're still doing all right in that. I think they're 9 out of the 32, so they're well in the playoff bit, but perhaps it's starting to take their toll in the league.
That seems to be the case. On to Chris then. You've obviously the Tottenham fan. You watch your team week in, week out. Your consistencies are probably the most glaring in the league, to be honest. But what do you think about Villas to start with?
Yeah, I wonder if it's a bit what we saw maybe last season with Newcastle, like they got into the Champions League. Have they got the squad to deal with it? Bit of tiredness. They went far in Europe, didn't they? Last season they got to the semi-finals of, was it the Conference League? But I guess in that league you're playing a lot weaker teams, so you can rotate a little bit more. I don't know. I'm not a Villa expert, but I presume they probably didn't go full strength every single week in the Conference League, whereas you're going to, aren't you, in the Champions League? You can't get away with it. So I mean that'd be. I'm not a Villa expert, but that'd be my best guess is that it's just a big drain when you're not a club that's used to it every season, as we saw with Newcastle last year, and when you don't get in it that often, as Newcastle haven't and Villa haven't. I think that almost becomes more of a focus, does it, than the league? Like, because it's the sexy, it's the glamorous games, so they really want to put everything into that, and maybe then you just get the bit of the drop off in the league. I think that's what we've seen with Villa, and like I said, with Newcastle last season as well.
Yeah, totally agree on the Newcastle thing. But let's hear, Sink, what are your views on it? Both Tottenham and Villa, really. Tottenham's they pretty much win one, lose one, and Villa are showing quite similar form. They don't seem to be able to get into their full flow. What do you think on it?
I think, do you know what? If you go back a few weeks, I think you made a point about their next run of fixtures that they were coming up against. I think that's come to fruition now. To be honest, it's been a tough run of games for them, and also, like Chris has pointed out, they have put a lot of effort into committing in the Champions League and to try and progress. So I think it is just going to take it out of them going forward. I don't think they have the squad to be able to deal with both campaigns. So they got to pick and choose their battles, really and truly. But yeah, I think it just goes back to what you said. The run of fixtures that they've got commitments in Champions League is just going to take its toll, and they just got to get results as and where they can, and then try and get the other side of Christmas. They've got to get through Christmas as well, which is always going to be a tough toll. A lot of games over a short period of time, so they got to get the results where they can.
Yeah, 100% agree. I have to admit, earlier in the season, I was a little bit frustrated with the early comparisons of, oh, Villa are still doing so well and not doing what happened to Newcastle the
Mm.
previous season. And I was told everybody who said it to me, hold on, we're still very early.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
haven't even got to the point that Newcastle fell off yet. And I think now we're seeing a bit of it. The only argument I had against it at the time was maybe Emery's been there, done it. He might deal with it a bit better, but it doesn't seem to be at the minute.
But
But
maybe that's where he's doing a bit better in Champions League, where he's getting better results, getting draws. Maybe where before he was getting the wins, but he's still
yeah,
getting more positive results than what he's getting in the Premier League.
Well, funny enough, I was looking at their form. Even in the Champions League, they won the first three, then they lost, then they drew,
Yeah,
which is kind of mirroring their league form at the minute, which is stuttery. So I don't know. Maybe they've just hit a dip.
potentially. Do you think this new Champions League structure's kind of helped them out a little bit? Because Newcastle had a terrible group last year and there wasn't any easy games. Do you think the structure they've had a few slightly easier games, which sort of papered over the cracks at times?
I think so. I
Um,
think I think the new structure has caught some of the more famous teams off guard a little bit, and some of the minnows have kind of taken advantage of that. I think and made the most of the opportunities that they've had. I think there've been a few upsets in the in this new structure in the earlier games, but it's starting to peter out now. Barcelona's starting to find their form in Champions League, and all the other big teams as well starting to find their form. So see how it goes getting through this first phase and see what happens.
Do you guys like the format? I'm not sure what to make of it, but I noticed on the last week or whatever, there were 4 or 5 like 5-0, 6-0. I don't know what to make of it.
I
Um,
like the change, to be honest. I just like the different format, something different. Rather, I was getting bored of the group stages where teams maybe weren't taking it as serious, whereas now, where it's a bit more jeopardy. They don't know how to take it, so they're gonna.
yeah,
hmm,
I'm in with Sync. I like it, one, because it's change, and two, because I think you don't get the groups of death.
Mm,
So you play a different team every game week. So even some of the smaller sides get to play a smaller side or a
yeah,
couple of smaller sides, which then gives them a chance to get a couple of wins and potentially get through. Whereas if you did say get put in a terrible group, you're looking at it thinking, well, where's my easy win? Where's my winnable game here?
yeah.
And
Where's
I
the
think
winner?
every team will look at it and go, right, there's a couple of winnable games I can get. And they're looking at potentially getting in around 9 points, which could nick them through into a playoff. So I actually prefer the format, to be fair.
hmm. I like it. I mean, I'd rather have a straight knockout competition. I think, but I will say this West model was used so the big clubs can get closer to their Super League. So although some of them may be getting caught with their pants down this year and maybe into next year, soon they'll get used to the format and the big clubs will stay in it like they want.
Yeah,
Great with that.
I'm sure they will.
Yeah, but
Are
then
we?
even the flip of what I said, the big clubs they'll probably have at least 2 hard games per season,
Mm.
maybe even 3. Whereas before, they look at their group and you go, oh, we win 4 of them games, and the other 2 I don't even
Mm.
need to win because I've already won 4 games.
Yeah, I
Mm.
think the difference is that there's no home and away legs, so kind of puts the advantage against the away team when they go to whoever. So like Real Madrid and Liverpool last week. Sorry, that was a good game because just Liverpool at Champions League in the evening. it's going to have a good atmosphere and whatnot. But now Real Madrid don't have their get back. So where do they get their get back from in the league going forward?
See, Brian just said in the chat there, who do we think's going to win it? Do you guys got a view on who you reckon will win the Champions League?
Don't know. See what happens after this first stage and how it pans out. Could be some shocks.
Yeah, I think it is. The league table is kind of starting to shape up nicely at the minute. So it all depends, because like teams like Real Madrid, who've just got Champions League DNA, if they sneak through into even the playoff phase and it becomes the knockout from there, you just can't write them off.
No, of course not. You never write off Madrid in the Champions League anyway. Even when they're poor, they're still dangerous.
They get to the latter stages and then it just kicks in, and they're so used to winning it. You can never rule them out, to be fair. But just quickly back to Ange and Emery and Tottenham and Villa. Does anybody see these teams? Has anybody watched these teams over the last few games and thought, I can see them either turning their form into a lot more wins or going the other way where it starts to fall off and they plummet even further down the table? Start with you, Chris, because obviously you would have watched Spurs over the last few weeks. One thing I've noticed, you do look a little bit more, dare I say, pragmatic in the way you defend rather than how you was before. Are you seeing any change in Ange?
Not really. Yeah, I'd probably disagree with that generally. I'm going to be a bit edgy and go for a controversial take at the moment. The common thing at the moment, Spurs are inconsistent. I think Spurs are beginning to show more consistency, because if you look at our last 5 matches, take out the City game, we had Galatasaray away, we were shit. You had Ipswich at home. Sorry, I make sure I don't want to get us demonetised or anything. Ipswich at home, we were poor. We beat City, great. Roma at home, they had 3 disallowed against us for offside, I think. And then yesterday we were in absolute shambles, and Fulham absolutely thoroughly deserved to beat us. So I think we are beginning to show consistency, not in the way I'd like, but yeah, I'm really struggling with the whole thing. I just I can't think of any other examples where a manager adopts a tactic that gets ripped open so easily every single week and then just plays the same tactic again the next week. But anyway, I guess I'm a little bit biased. Maybe you guys have got a more measured take on it, because I'm kind of getting a bit fed up of it, to be honest.
Yeah, no. To be honest, I would have to agree with Chris somewhat. Like, I can just see the same sort of pattern consistently happening with Tottenham. With Emery, it's a bit different. Like he's chasing something, he's got a target, but obviously he hasn't got the squad to deal with what he's trying to do. Ange, like, I've always felt that he needed to adapt. If you want to do what your philosophy is, it has to adapt in the Premier League. You've got so many coaches now in the league that are good coaches. They can change the game. They can look at something and change their team and exploit your weakness. You've got to be able to adapt, and if you don't, you'll just get found out. And even sometimes, even like at the bottom of the table, even the coaches down there, even they are trying to do certain things in games. But again, they don't have the squad to deal with the league, but they're willing to try and change things. And sometimes in certain games, they get something out of it. But with Ange, there's just consistent inconsistency. That's what it is. That's what they're consistent at.
The irony, honestly, is that when we've played the best this season is when, in my opinion, we've been forced to play a different way. And I was interested in the City game to see how much of this is Ange actually purposefully changing tactics, or how much of it is you don't have a choice against City. You can't defend on the halfway line. You don't dominate the ball. You haven't got a choice. Our fullbacks actually played as fullbacks, not as central attacking midfielders. But again, they haven't really got much of a choice against City. And I think what we're seeing now in the last couple of games is exactly that. It wasn't Ange working out how to play against City. It was just a bit of fortune, because that's how we were forced to play. And actually, it works really well for us. Ironically, a lot more like a Conte team. And that's how our players are better set up to play like a counter-attacking team than we are with handball.
The thing is, you've got fast players. So if you've got fast players, counter-attack football is your bread and butter, because you can always exploit their transition. and that's what you've got.
Mm.
And
And it's,
go on, Stocks.
I was going to say, I find it a funny one for Tottenham in that I'd say their two best, most informed players whenever I've watched them are Kulusevski and Johnson. They sort of like to come in off the same side as well, which is a bit of a pain in the bum.
But the
Yeah.
worst thing
One of the things.
Werner's look
I
decent.
was going to add that even with that, you've got Werner, who pops up in the right positions. He may not always make the right decision when he gets the ball, but he's always making the right runs, or he's just getting there at the right time.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I was going to say just about some of the Spurs fans that frustrates me. I mean, we're a very divided fan base, but a lot of Spurs fans have got an excuse. No matter what happens in any game, there's an excuse for it, right? So yesterday, Fulham, credit to Fulham, they looked really well coached. I didn't think we did, but
No,
the excuse was we got loads of injuries, and that was true. It's factually true. However, we had almost all of our first choice playing away at Brighton when we capitulated, away at Palace when we didn't turn up, to Ipswich when they absolutely battered us. So I just don't buy the excuse, like, because that doesn't fit that narrative. But there's always something every game as to why it's like okay and why we'll be great in the next window when we go and buy loads of players. And of course, it never happens.
Yeah, I think that's just a typical fan in a nutshell, mate. Some will look on the positive, some will look on the negative, but some will actually just see it how it is. And it's every fan base has a lot of people in every single position. It's just some fan bases have some. It's slightly slanted, whichever way the fan base tends to be. To be fair,
I just don't think, honestly, last thing I'll say on Spurs, I just don't think any team should be this easy to play against when you're 18 months into a manager taking over. Like Amarin's just taken over. I would have fiver with you guys now that when they play us in the quarterfinals in 2 weeks of the League Cup, I bet you they're more organised than we are, and it'll have been there 3 weeks. I guarantee it.
Time will
That's
tell.
an interesting point. We can't quite completely stop talking about Tottenham, Chris, but we're going to move on to the FA Cup because, for me, we're going to go on. Is it still good for a giant killing? And for me, that team, that little banner next to your head there, is the one that looks like potentially the most likely one with Tottenham and their flip-flapping form. Is that something you could see away to Tamworth?
I wouldn't put anything past Tottenham. I mean, you know, the way our form seems to be going, we'd be much better off drawing a big team because we seem to play well against them as a really poor side. But what will happen probably, we'll play as many. We don't really have a squad that you can break down into first choice and reserves because we just don't have enough players. But we'll play as much of a reserve team as we can probably.
Yeah.
I mean, we should go. It should be a walk in the park, let's be honest. But it comes down to attitude, doesn't it? And I mean, that's something that worries me greatly about the Spurs players. Are they really going to be up for a trip to Tamworth? And I'm going to say we're not going to lose. I'd be amazed if we did. But would it be the biggest surprise in the world to me as a Spurs fan I've seen us go out to, I mean, very quickly off the top of my head, cup games against Notts County, Colchester, Port Vale, Bradford. That's just very quickly. I'm sure there's been worse than that as well. But so it wouldn't massively surprise me.
Mate, I've got a similar list to you. I went to Orient and watched us draw. I watched us draw at Stevenage. Cambridge have knocked us out in recent years. So
Grimsby, there's another one I just remembered.
I remember when QPR got beat by Vauxhall Motors in the FA Cup.
I think we have a winner here. On the other hand, I think you've probably seen the best FA Cup goal ever scored, which was by a QPR player at the time.
Yeah. No, that was a very memorable goal. Love that.
Hold on, so someone's not seen Ricky Villa's 1981 FA Cup final goal, no?
No, just QPR's
Right. There's a few sort of tasty stories going on here. I've put Man City and Salford on because obviously it's an actual Manchester derby because both teams are quite local, and then you've got Leeds and Harrogate, which is another local derby. It's thrown out a few interesting ones this draw, to be fair.
Yeah.
Is Ashley Young? His Everton are drawn away to Peterborough, and he could end up playing his son. His 18-year-old son.
Oh, really? Well, I didn't even realize.
Yeah.
Some great knowledge, to be fair.
Yeah, that is now one I'll probably look out for. Just have a look, see if they go up against each other.
Surely that's got to be a first in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. No, I think.
Unless back in like wartime, if there was one back then.
I remember a random bit of football knowledge here. I remember Iceland a few years ago. It might have even been Ida Gudjonsson when he first started out. Yeah, he came on as a sub, and it was his dad who got subbed off.
Oh yeah, that was for Iceland, wasn't it, or was it for their team in Iceland?
Yeah. No, it was for the national team.
Yeah.
I tell you, no, on the cup draw there though, I quite like that City game because in the Salford, that like I don't exactly know how it's structured, but there's like Gary Neville and Nicky Butt and Scholes are all involved, don't they? So that would be. Can you imagine if they won there? At that stage, it could be Man City's like 20th game without a win or something, and I can just see like Salford winning and those being up in the director's box or something. That would be amazing.
Yeah, they'd love that. They'd love that.
Yeah. It's a nice little story behind it, to be fair. So it'd be an interesting game just for that fact.
Yeah, no, definitely. That would be tasty to see. One game that I'm actually looking forward to seeing is the Bromley Newcastle game. Want to see that one. That one looks good. I don't think it'll be a giant killing though, but it'll be good to see Bromley go up again.
It's games like this that just worry me as a Newcastle fan. Over the years, we've had some horrible ones, and I just look at them and I just think it's the kind of moment that we completely freeze, and something weird happens. But hopefully not. To be fair, it's rare that we get a home draw against someone that you'd call a quite small side. So it'd be interesting to see. What are you thinking about your draw? Away to Leicester? How are you feeling about that?
Well, there'll be a good confidence booster for Leicester, if I'll be honest with you. We're not a cup competition team, so I never have any positive outlook when it comes to these games. So I'm looking seeing a Leicester win. So
fair enough.
I got to pull you up, Mitch. I got to pull you up on that. I remember you playing at home to Cambridge a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and they beat us. That's why I worry about these games.
You got the favourable draw.
To be fair, that's probably one of the. Well, we got one. I think we got a couple in the League Cup this year, but last year League Cup draws across the board were horrendous, and I think the year before that they weren't great either.
I tell you though, I feel a bit sorry for you because you had Ashley for years, right? And you just didn't seem to. You never seemed to take competitions remotely seriously. Mind you, neither really did Spurs, but I mean, looked like terrible time to be a Newcastle fan then.
Oh, yeah, mate, it was just horrendous. We were trying to stay in the Premier League, but we also then were throwing most cup games, and it was just like, what is the point of this club at the minute?
Dark days they were.
Well, as we've just spoken about Villa's spiralling form stocks, what do you think about that? Villa West Ham when it rolls around in early Jan?
Well, they'll get that confidence booster they'll sorely need. We'll get knocked out and can focus on the relegation battle.
I'm sure you'll just about stay away from that. Just about. On a slightly different subject, there was talks of potentially rolling VAR out for, I think it was all the way down to League Two. Starting with Sync, because obviously your team's in the Championship. How would you feel about it if they all of a sudden turned around and said, right, from next season we're going VAR across all leagues down to League Two and all competitions?
I wouldn't be annoyed. I wouldn't be phased because the Premier League, that's the standard. So eventually it probably will end up like that some way down the line. But I prefer it not having VAR in EFL. It's so much better. The game flows better. It's still just got that old school feel to it as well. I mean, there's been games that I've seen and it's gone against us. And if there was VAR, then we would have got the result of that particular game. But I prefer it. I prefer the how it is in terms of the old school nature of the refereeing without VAR in the championship.
Fair enough. How about you, Stocks? What do you think on the proposals of something like this, or even a slightly different take on the question of the way VAR comes in to the latter stages of these tournaments when all of
Um,
the lower league clubs are out and it's just Prem clubs left?
I see. That annoys me. You should have the same rules at the start of the competition as you would at the end. All right, I can just about deal with it coming in for a final because, or let's say the semi-finals, because that's played at Wembley and they'll already have the technology set up. I can just about accept that. But the FA Cup is probably the best cup competition in the world. Domestic cup competition. It's the oldest. It's always worked off the same rules. I wish they'd stop fanning around with it. I was like, I enjoy going and watching football league games. Whenever I can, I'll go watch Orient. No doubt, eventually I'll start watching a few Reading games. It doesn't need VAR. It's exciting and as interesting as it is. You can go there and enjoy watching a game of football. It's not like when you go to your Prem club and then it's almost sometimes you double check yourself because you're thinking, oh, it's going to get pulled back. With a football league game, I can just go and enjoy it, and it feels like football from when you was younger, just a bit more exciting and a bit more raw without so much intervention.
Yeah,
And I'd like that, and definitely the FA Cup to stay like that. FA Cup's had enough challenges over the years. Teams like Man United pulling out and mucking around with kickoffs and finals. Just stop trying to make it better and just let it do its thing. It's good enough.
yeah. On that, before we go into Chris's point of view, the thing that really annoys me is that the FA Cup final is embedded in the middle of a normal
Oh,
football Premier League weekend. It's an absolute shambles that they do that. It used to literally have a full build up from like 10 o'clock in the morning up to the game, the cheesy songs and everything, and it was brilliant. But now it's like there's other games on, and the FA Cup's sort of a bit of a sideshow, which is a joke, really.
Yeah.
But how do you feel about it, Chris? And I think you might even be correcting me here on how VAR is used in these competitions because
No, you're right. I never fully understand the argument of. I just come from the point of view of use the best tools you've got to make the most accurate decisions. I never quite understand how it's unfair on Mansfield that they don't have VAR because there's a match taking place 300 miles away in Southampton that does. I don't get that. And also, if you're going round by round, right, the FA Cup starts in August with the dog and duck. Like, it's never coming in. Anyway, but skipping over that, before I get on to the point I was going to make about VAR, you just reminded me about the FA Cup in general, right? I was watching, what was the game? Wealdstone was on TV at the weekend.
yeah.
Who were they playing? Can anyone remember?
No.
It wasn't Peterborough, was it? Anyway, whoever they were playing, the commentator, I thought it might have been Dan Walker on BBC, without any sense of irony, was talking about how important that it's retained all of its prestige and it's so important the FA Cup. And literally in the same breath said, I can't remember who the team was. I should find out.
Wickham.
Wickham. Said Wickham have made 11 changes today, and I'm like, it says all you need to know when Wickham are making 11 changes. But anyway, my point on the VAR is from a different point of view, right? From a refereeing point of view, I just don't see how it's possible because just the number of officials, right? So there's a numbers crisis in the country, and any of you guys who might play or be involved at grassroots will probably know loads of games take place every weekend without officials. There's just not enough. So if you're going to roll VAR out, you're now needing, on top of the referees that are at the game, at least two more VAR, assistant VAR, possibly even more. I don't even know how many they have on the Premier League games. It amuses me on the FA Cup final when you see the list of officials. It's like a team's squad, right? They've got like assistant VAR, second assistant VAR. Like, how many of these guys do you need? But if you're going to do that across all of the leagues, where are you getting the officials from? Well, apparently, right now, the quality is not good enough. Well, you're going to be promoting like a couple of hundred who are further down the pyramid, right, just to meet the demand. So I don't really get it. And also just the money, like who is paying to install all of these cameras at Newport County? Like, that you've got to have all of them up in the stands and everything, haven't you, for it to work? So I guess these games don't have. Obviously, they're not going to have as many cameras on as the Premier League do. So I just don't see how it works in the practicalities of it, to be honest.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, that's a fair point. To be fair, I'm still a little bit in the same boat as Stocks here, where it's either you use it in the competition or you don't use it in the competition, or just basically that. I don't even really agree with use it in the final because it's at Wembley. Just if the whole competition can't have it, then just don't use it.
Yeah,
I bet the Coventry fans would probably agree with that. I would imagine. Just don't use it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Right, let's roll on to the next topic as we're on VAR, and it's into the hot seat for Chris. Right, first up, we're going to go with one that we spoke about last week that I feel had a very similar situation this week, if not an even lighter tackle, but we got completely different answers from VAR. So last week we had Ndidi on Cole Palmer that made me wince as I watched it while sat with Stocky and was adamant it was a red card the whole time.
Mhm.
And the Kearney one that even now when I watch a replay back knowing it's a red, that it was given as a red, I look at it and I just can't see how. And the phrase intensity that was used, the lack of intensity that Ndidi had, then you compare that to Kearney's, which is a much sort of softer touch on the back of Kulusevski's leg, and they've come up with two completely different answers. Going to you first, Sink, what's your view on the two situations?
Well, I think originally I did think the Ndidi one was a red card, but also at the same time I did feel that it was more of a running motion, and it was I could understand where the referee was coming from in terms of where they was going with their decision, but for me it was a red card. With the Kearney one, I think it's almost similar, but it's just out of control, and that's all it is. You're just out of control, and you're trying to do something. You're trying to get to the ball, and what's even worse with Kearney is that the ball's even further away from Kulusevski. So with Ndidi, you can see that the ball's closer to where he can try and get around Palmer, what he's trying to do. But with Kearney, he's just completely like away from the ball. So yeah, I could understand why that is definitely a red. But the Ndidi one for me was, but should have been red as well. And this is the problem, is that you just have that level of inconsistency in the decisions that's given, where fans, players, managers, they're going to look at this and think, well, what's the difference? When really, in reality, there's not much difference really.
Yeah, I agree with what you say with the distance of the ball and not being able to get it. But the VAR reasoning for not overturning Ndidi was the fact it lacked intensity.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they've
The,
given
the
the
only
one
reason why, the only reason why I understand with what they're saying is that he wasn't stamping down Ndidi. It's more of a running motion what he was doing, whereas Kenny is just out of control. Like he's just
I would disagree because looking at the two situations, I would say Ndidi's weight is
mm.
on the foot that contacts Palmer,
Oh yeah, no, no,
where
no.
Kenny's weight is on his standing leg.
Yeah. The thing is that's not even relevant in terms of their actions. Their studs are showing, and they make contact, and so that's it. So if your studs are showing and you make contact, as the rules have been explained to me, I feel like, and you're out of control, both feet are off the ground. I just think that's just a red. It's just
Okay,
that's how I've interpreted how it's been explained to me from referees. If your feet off the ground, studs are showing, you make contact, you're out of control, you could cause an injury even if you don't. Should be a red.
fair enough. Stocks. What are you saying?
Mm, I was really, I kept swaying between the Carnival one. I think he's just really stupid. I'm not gonna chuck out the old. He's not that kind of player because I've got absolutely no idea.
Yeah.
It was daft.
To be fair, Kenny is a bit of a shitbag. I'm not going to
Is
lie.
he?
He is. Yeah.
Is he? All right then. Because I've only watched it the once, so I was like, "Ooh." I mean, it's stupid and it's not very nice. Was he just, I don't know, was he being a bit overzealous with just scoring? I don't know.
Maybe the
Yeah,
drilling going through his body. Maybe he's just amped up. Wants to.
but I won't get away from what he has done is dangerous and could have. Luckily, it didn't injure Kulusevski. And to Kulusevski's credit, he got back up and all right, let's carry it like whatever. But I can't remember. Did the ref go straight red? With
No.
or was
He
it a
went
book?
yellow, told him, sent him to the screen.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, if he'd gone straight red because he really felt it was dangerous, I could have lived with it. But was it that much of a mistake to overturn? That's where I disagree.
This is my biggest gripe with this one and comparing it to the Ndidi one because I feel it's less of an error from the referee on the pitch than the Ndidi one. And he was told to go and have another look. But we'll roll on to Chris, and Chris can explain it from a referee's point of view in the Kearney situation. And
I mean, for me, Sink's pretty much nailed it. Really, I thought the Kenny one was worse for me. Because I mean, you just have to look at the pictures that we've got up there. Like, he could have really done some serious damage there. He's higher up as well, a little bit than Ndidi. But if you just look at the two challenges there, like Sink says, like relative to where the ball is, I know this is not going to probably go down well, but Ndidi's is closer to being a reasonable tackle. Like the ball's sort of there, and then Palmer's just got in the way. Ball's not even there to be won by Kenny. I mean, it is a shocker. But that said, the only 2 points I make is for me, I think they're both red cards. And then one thing when fans get a bit frustrated with the inconsistency is you don't want consistency if someone's got the first decision wrong, right? Because then you're just going to get two wrong decisions. So is that, I don't know because I'm not involved in those circles anymore, but is this an example where they've reflected on that Ndidi one and realised that actually no, it should have been a red card and therefore we'll learn going forward, right? At the end of the day, better to get 1 out of 2 right than get 0 out of 2 right and be consistent, in my opinion. But I think they're both red cards.
so, on respect to that, one last thing on it. Do you think they've kind of half made a rod for their own back here with the referee's call and the higher bar for overturning situations now? If they've just lowered it for this because they've missed the Ndidi one?
Well, I don't think they've lowered it. I think the Ndidi one is high enough that it should have been overturned. I think where you will get some errors, I think we've seen a couple with Sandro Martinez this season. That Fernandez, when he was sent off against Spurs, wasn't a red card, but the bar for overturning it is quite high. So you will get stuff like that. But I don't think, for me as a referee looking at these two, they are just straightforward, completely, yes, clear and obviously incorrect decisions. And they are both really bad challenges. At the end of the day, the whole point of serious foul play is that we're trying to protect players from potentially being seriously injured. And both of those two players, if we now know that they'd broken their leg or something, I don't think it would have been a massive surprise. They are both shockers, and you shouldn't be doing that to your fellow professionals. So, yeah, I don't. For me, it was just that they got the Ndidi one wrong. They should have overturned it. Simple as that.
Okay, fair enough. So final sort of conclusions. Chris is saying Kenny should have been a red. Stocks, what you saying?
I mean, I can live with it. I can live with it being a red. If the ref give a red straight away, I wouldn't complain too much because it is endangering Kulusevski. I don't see how that one gets turned over. I'm still a little bit off with the not being turned over compared to Ndidi, but you're never going to all agree on everything, are you?
Fair enough. Sink.
Yeah, I'm agreeing it's a red, but So with the Ndidi one, was just to jog my memory, was it given a yellow originally?
Yeah.
I think both of these were given yellows, weren't
Yeah.
they?
Both the on-field decisions were yellow. The referee was sent to the screen for Kearney. He wasn't for Ndidi.
Yeah. Oh, he wasn't for Ndidi.
No.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. No, it should be a red, and it should just be that consistency. Really, I don't think there should be a problem with sending refs to the screen. I guess if they want to save time on every decision, but on a decision like Ndidi, that should be sent to the screen. I think.
I tell you something, guys, that's literally breaking news just popped up on my phone right this second. Is that the IFAB, who are the board that make the laws of football, they've approved expanded trials of something called football video support. Anyway, essentially, it is that coach's challenge of rather than what we currently have, that VAR just review everything, very NFL style coaches challenges. So that was already being trialed anyway, but now there's going to be even more trials of it, and there's a number of FIFA associations, different countries, have said that they want to trial that. So it looks like that will be something that's going to be expanded with a view. If that goes well, you could probably expect that to be adopted as the approach in maybe 3 or 4 years, possibly.
Okay, fair enough. One question, Chris. Do you know if when a team does their coach's challenge, is that for the referee to go and have a look at the screen, or will it go up to VAR?
No, just the referee. That's it.
Okay.
Interesting.
I'm liking that idea.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Right, on to the next one. This one for me, I can't see we're going to disagree on it, but maybe we will.
Which one is it? Which penalty are we talking
This
about?
is the second one. So Fabianski coming out and punching Gabriel in the head.
All right.
Weirdly enough, I had fans telling me that it was soft and there wasn't enough contact for it to be a penalty. I'm completely baffled by that. But as a West Ham fan, Stocky, I'm going to start with you. What were your thoughts on this penalty?
There was a lot of people around me who were going, that didn't notice it was a pen straight away. And I said, that's going to be a pen. My only problem was I wish he'd knocked them stupid veneers out. I really wish he did clatter him. To be honest, I don't think there was anything controversial about either of Arsenal's penalties. I thought they were both penalties. I just don't get why they get away with shit housing, time wasting, spoiling the game consistently. That's the thing that was getting me with it. The big decisions, I think the ref got right, but I think the rest of the game, they just lap it up, and it drives me mad.
Okay, fair enough. Sink. What are your thoughts on this? I think I've just noticed that there's another picture inside of our picture here, so I've got a secondary question on this game after we go through this one. But what are you thinking on the Fabianski Gabriel pen?
See, I've always wondered that what would happen in these kind of situations, like as a kid, because they never really happened. And if it did happen, that the goalkeeper would normally just get away with it anyway and be like, fair dues, he's got to go for the ball. But yeah, I'd agree with Stocky. To be fair, I think it is a pen. He's made contact with Gabriel, whether it's hard contact or light contact. It's contact. It's impeded him from making the header with the ball. So yeah, it's a pen for me.
Yeah, my thoughts on it, you can't punch a man in the head on a football pitch, regardless of who you are and what you're trying to do. So over to you, Chris. Any different thoughts on what's been said by the boys so far?
Yeah, absolutely different. Yeah, I'm of the view that you should be freely allowed to punch Arsenal players in the face and there be no consequence.
Here.
But unfortunately, that's not actually in the laws. So the laws as they are currently written, then yeah, it's a clear penalty, isn't it? I tell you though, one thing that Stocky just reminded me of that happened yesterday, talking about gamesmanship, the polite word. Something happened when Kearney got sent off for Fulham that everybody was outraged by in the crowd, but I don't think there's anything you can do about it. As Kearney walks off, he gestures to their keeper to go down. Their goalkeeper went down injured. And I'm not joking. The second that the ref went over to see if he was all right, all of their players ran over to Marco Silva and had like a little team meeting about how are they going to restructure. Like, it was unreal, like just taking the mickey.
How are
But-
refs so blind to it? It infuriates me so much.
What can you do about it? There's nothing in the law that you can do to stop that.
You got to be smart. You got to be smart.
That's why teams are now getting their keeper to go down, because there is literally nothing you can do. You can't make him step off the pitch. You can't play on the floor.
The guy next to me was like, I should caution them all. I'm like, but all the players were still on the players on the field. They can stand where they want on the field, so they all ran over. Silva was in his technical area. He's allowed to talk to them, so they didn't do anything wrong. But it absolutely stunk. Like, it was so obvious. But you know.
Right. So the other decision I was talking about in this game, I believe this was the first goal.
Yeah, the first penalty. Yeah.
Not the first penalty, but it's a corner for Arsenal.
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure who it is. Does a very American football style bit of blocking on one of the West Ham defenders.
That was Timber on Paqueta.
Yeah. And they seem to get away with it an awful lot. For me, it should be a foul. But it never seems to get given.
Do you know what it is? It's dark arts. That's what it is, because I've watched the highlights a few times. Sorry, and when Timber makes the run, you don't really see, unless you go back and look at it, you don't really see like a foul kind of contact. It's like he's trying to get ahead of him to the near post, and because of his movement, it almost makes it look like Paqueta's following him rather than he's actually been impeded by him. That's how I've seen it from my perspective. And then obviously you got Gabriel, who's just the main target. That's where everyone's focus is on. So you don't even really notice Timber's contact on Paqueta.
Fair enough. This is to be fair, this is one I didn't notice in game, but a friend of mine and Stockies sent a message saying that clearly to him it's clearly a foul. So I went back and had a look, and I've kind of got to agree once you watch it back. Let's go to Stocks. I'm guessing you're going to be spitting feathers on this one, but
I am a bit. Do you know what? I think if it was Allardyce or Dyche side that commit the foul, it'd just be bruising at a corner. Is because it's Arsenal and Arteta, it's dark arts. They're sneaky little fuckers. Because when you watch, they are. Because Paqueta wins that at the near post, just that one nudge misses, and Gabriel's there to nod it in. All right, it's a great. If you're a coach and you set up that corner, well done. But it's a foul. I bet you it's a foul at the other end. If Thomas Souček does that to someone at the other end, it gets blown up.
I think if you disguise it as well as Timber's disguised it, though, I think
you didn't know.
I think you will get away with it. Because I'll look out for something like that, and until Mitch mentioned it, I didn't even see it as a foul. The run on Timber's run.
It's different when you're watching it on Sky, because you got Gary Neville talking. Oh, Arsenal, they're so good. when you see your man, because do you know what, they didn't do it? They didn't foul him again for them corners, and the next one he headed out easy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of them that it's probably more frustrating if you support the team that he goes in against. But
but other than that, we were well battered. But they when they decide to play football, they're quite good. But there's a lot of very unpleasant things that go around it that are conveniently ignored by a lot of people.
Fair enough. So, Chris, referee's view on this one?
Going back to what you were just saying a minute ago, Mitch, about the high bar, I think this is probably an example of the higher bar. I think you look at it, you're hard pushed not to say it's not a foul, right? But is it so blatant that VAR are going to get involved? Probably not. I think it's one that the referee needs to spot on the field, and that's where I've got to give Arsenal some. I might ostracize myself from the Spurs community here, but give Arsenal some praise. Like, their set pieces are like watching an NFL team, right? The ball's dead, and they're doing all kinds of stuff is going on. Like their set their set piece coach is earning some money at Arsenal. Like they are doing all kinds of stuff, and it's really hard as an official to keep up with that. But I'm really, don't want to say it, really impressed by how they approach their attacking set pieces. Like it's so hard to keep on top of it from a defensive point of view. It's why they keep scoring so many goals. Like people need to watch what they're doing and copy that. Basically, it is like a playbook from an NFL team. I think that is the way forward. We should all be copying that. Really impressive.
Everyone should take 15 to 20 seconds to take a corner.
But okay,
I tell you what I would say on time wasting, and we got Mitch in here. Newcastle are phenomenal. Like Pope, the worst keeper I've ever seen for time wasting. Like unreal.
Yeah, we've been doing that a good few years where Pope goes down when we need to break up play or we need to get an information on or anything like that. He's been doing it for an awfully long time. And the weirdest thing about it was, do you know who the fans were that whinged about it the most when we were doing it?
What's that?
Fucking Arsenal fans.
Typical, isn't it? But you know what's really good is that because Nick Pope is actually quite injury prone, like refs are just going to believe that he might be injured anyway when he does go down. So it's not going to be that they're going to get another yellow card.
Yeah, the sad thing is, as a ref,
there's enough for you to think that he's injured. So,
but there's nothing you can do as a ref. Like even if they go down and they pretend they're injured, you're not a medical professional. Like you can't say, well, you're definitely not. Like it is a really difficult, and the really clever one, I suppose, is I'm surprised clubs don't exploit this more. Is the head injury, because the laws say that if someone's got a head injury, you should stop play immediately. I'm surprised people don't take advantage of that more and just kind of randomly drop to the floor holding their head. But there's nothing you can do. Like what is the way around that? I've got no idea. Because the second as a referee, you start going, oh no, I'm going to ignore you, and we're going to, because I don't think you're injured, and the guy's like broken his leg or something, then you're going to get criticised, aren't you? So
yeah, you got to react, force me into a position.
And the first thing you're always taught on a referee course is your number one thing over everything else is the safety of the players.
Yeah.
So you've always got to stop it, and that's where maybe the game's lost a bit of integrity, I suppose, over the years. Like it's now, because it's worth so much money, everybody's looking for that little edge. So that kind of fair play and sportsmanship goes out the window, really, doesn't it? And that's not really on the referees; that's on the clubs.
Do you know what though? I think if you delve back into the history of the history books of football, I think there's always been managers that have always tried to get the edge over opposition and whatnot, doing sneaky underhanded things that you'd think, nah, you can't be doing things like that. Even when you think back to like only a few years back with Bielsa, when he was spying. I mean, it's not against the rules, but it's just so underhanded. It's great.
Yeah. Just one question to you, Chris, before we move on to the last decision. What you were saying about the referee has to spot it on the pitch before the VAR, rather than the VAR getting involved. Don't you think that set pieces should kind of be the other way around with so much going on? Because on average, you've probably got 16 players in the box, all of them jostling for position, all of them making runs. How is the ref and one official who's going to be your linesman going to be able to try and keep an eye on everybody?
Yeah, it's difficult for sure, but I guess this is where maybe you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, because if we start getting VAR interventions for that level of contact, you're probably having VAR interventions at most corners then. Well, I guess most corners don't always lead to goals, but they're going to be coming in far more often. So, and then fans get annoyed at that and start criticising, it's all about VAR. And so finding the right balance. I think, in all honesty, one thing you just learn to accept is that as a referee, that really no matter what you do, you get criticised, because you're always criticised with the knowledge of hindsight of what happens, right? I'm going to give you a very weird, quick analogy. Well, not analogy, but an example from history. I don't know if you remember in 2010, the World Cup final, Howard Webb refereed, and really early on, the Dutch Nigel de Jong, was it, had his studs in the chest.
Karate kick, yeah.
And Howard Webb, I think it was 9 minutes in. I felt so sorry for him. and he's got a decision to make, and he shows a yellow card, and all Netherlands did in that game was go out to kick the crap out of Spain, and he ends up with like 14 yellows or something, and everyone goes, oh yeah, but he should have sent him off at the start. If he sends him off at the start, I guarantee everyone's going, we weren't here to watch the referee, he's ruined the game. Like, that's the kind of thing, right? You just can't. So many examples where you just can't really win. I think that this is probably one of them. Like if it was a massive two arms in the back and the player had gone flying, I think you've got to say it's pretty obvious. But we've got, what I don't like about VAR is we've got this really weird tolerance level that ends up with this situation where the referee's not giving it, like this example, and the VAR guys can sit there, look at it and go, yeah, I think it's a foul, but it's not enough of a foul for us to change this. And I find that like mind-blowing that we're sitting there as officials going, oh no, they've made the wrong decision, but it's not enough of a wrong decision to fix it. And I'm like, what is that? But that is where we are, unfortunately.
Right, let's roll on to our last decision of the evening before we go back to Brian's question towards Stocky, because I'm sure Stocky could take a while on that one. We're going to this. So this is in the Brighton-Southampton game. I believe the game was 1-1 at this point. The ball's come in from wide. You've got Adam Armstrong in the middle. He's missed it. It's gone into the guy at the back post. He's put it in the net. So VAR have put the lines up. Guy at the back post is onside. Adam Armstrong's offside. Hasn't touched the ball, but they've disallowed the goal. I'm going to go with Sink first on this one.
Yeah.
What do you think about this decision, mate?
For me, the decision, I think it is offside. For the reason why I've said that is because he's made a motion to the ball, so he's given them an answer. He's allowed the question to be asked. If he just carries on running and just throws off towards one side of the goal, away from the ball, then it's through to his teammate, and then he goes and scores. But because he's made a motion to the ball, he's allowed a question to be asked, whether he touches it or not. But he's made the motion to the ball.
Fair point. Stocky?
I found it a really interesting one. I didn't bother watching this game's highlights until Chris mentioned it in the chat this week. So I had a look. It's interesting because from that picture, I'd say he's bang offside because, well, where the cross is going in, he would attack. So he would take the goalkeeper's view. But in fact, he runs past it and doesn't touch it, which all of a sudden, I don't know. I don't know if they still use the phase analogy of such decisions, but where he runs past it and doesn't touch it, does that mean he weren't active? Because he really does run quite ahead of the cross, which makes it interesting. When I look at it there, it's offside. But the way it pans out, I suppose it's too late then. If the liner would give it offside, did the linesman give it offside?
He did, yeah.
Well, I can live with that. Whereas if it was given as a goal, then VAR said, "Oh, wait a minute," that'd be more of a problem. If the linesman said it was offside, then I can live with that because he gets one look.
Okay. Well, yeah, the picture looks offside to me. I'm going to say a little bit before we go over to Chris. I think Armstrong has been a little bit naive by actually physically trying to make a play for the ball. If he does try his best to stay well out of it, he might get away with it. I think an example, I think it was Giroud against West Brom, where he's in a very similar position and he flings a leg at it, catches his heel, and it goes over his head, hits the bar and goes in.
Oh yeah, the scorpion kick.
Yeah, so Armstrong's play for the ball is going to make all three of the Brighton players make a different reaction to what they would do if he wasn't there at all, which is why I would say it's offside.
And the goalkeeper.
And the goalie, the goalie's going to prepare for that potentially happening because maybe he's not going to think it in that moment, but Armstrong making a play for the ball is going to make him reposition himself to try and stop whatever Armstrong's going to do. But over to you, Chris. Final say on this one.
I'd be amazed if we don't see similar incidents before the end of the season with a different decision, possibly multiple. Like sometimes it will stand, sometimes it won't. But a few points in law just to point out. First of all, being in an offside position is not an offence, right? You have to then do certain other things for it to be penalised.
Mm-hmm.
So just the fact that we can see clearly there he's offside is not enough for it to be a free kick. When it comes in, yeah, he's run past the ball, so it then becomes, if he makes a play for the ball, really in law then at that stage it's actually quite clear that the decision should be that he's offside. And the argument was, or the justification given was that he tried to flick his leg out to the ball. When I saw it, I wasn't entirely convinced by that. I'm not sure I agree with that, but that seems to be the view of most referees, that he's tried to play the ball. And once he's tried to play the ball, then I think you have to, the point that you've just made, Mitch, is quite a valid one. But on its own is not enough, actually, for it to be offside, which is, if you pretend he's not there right now, what does the keeper do? Because I guarantee the keeper doesn't stand where he is. He moves towards the far post, right? And he can't really, because Armstrong might play the ball and shoot. And he does try to play the ball. So I'm a bit conflicted. On balance, I think it's hard for me. There's a lot of me that feels like it should be able to count and it shouldn't be penalised. But actually, when I look at the law, which as a boring ref is what I have to do rather than what I would like the law to be, I guess you have to say that, yeah, the law says that he's offside. He's in an offside position. If you think he's tried to play the ball, then it's a black and white one, really. And he has to be penalised. If you don't think he's tried to play the ball, as I didn't think he did, it becomes a bit of a grayer area. But yeah, honestly, I believe this. And there's one other thing, I'm sure we'll see this in some other weeks, so I won't go into it, but the notion of what is deliberately playing the ball, that causes a lot of controversy and inconsistency and offsides, and this is one of those. I can see absolutely why Russell Martin was so annoyed. But yeah, on balance, I'd say it's the correct decision, but it doesn't necessarily sit that well with me, if I'm honest.
That's fair.
Okay, so in situations like this, would there be a conversation between the linesman and, well, the assistant referee, should I say, and VAR, for them to sort of ask him, do you think he was trying to play the ball? Is that why you gave him off?
Yeah, so the first thing that happened is there's a conversation between the assistant and the referee, right? I think I read that the flag didn't go out for 28 seconds after the ball hit the net. And that will be because the referee and the assistant are discussing it whilst they're off celebrating. And the conversation at that point will be the assistant going, look, this guy's offside. But when you're is in an offside position, but when you're stood on the side, it's very difficult to have any depth perception. So he'll be talking to the referee, and he might not have been able to see whether he's made an attempt for the ball. Also, if he's like 10 yards further forward, and he's probably not interfering, not in the keeper's thoughts at all. So it's very hard to know that as an assistant. So the assistant will be saying, this guy's in an offside position. In your opinion, as the ref, pooling their combined, they've got two different angles, right? So pooling the information they have, they'll be having that conversation of, he's definitely in an offside position. Do you think he's done anything worthy of being penalised? Has he tried to play the ball? Where is he in relation to the goalkeeper? And those two between them have then come to the decision, yeah, we think he's offside, put the flag up. Then it goes to VAR. The one thing I would say about this, the VAR check took forever. And they've I think they've procedurally got their VAR check incorrect, because on the field, they've penalised Armstrong in the middle. The VAR then proceeded to take over 3 minutes to check the guy at the back post who eventually scores. Who takes them 3 minutes to work out, no, he's onside. Then they go and check the guy in the middle, but he was the one who the assistant had flagged offside. So I think they've got that the wrong way round. They should have checked the guy who was actually flagged offside first. And if they'd have done that, we'd have got a decision a lot quicker. But yeah, the conversation will be taking place then about, the VAR will be looking at it going, has he actually made it? This one all comes down to, has he deliberately tried to play the ball? I was a bit surprised, actually. Maybe I'm slightly wrong and I don't get the Premier League briefings, but where it's a subjective decision, they should be checking the screen. In my opinion, it was a subjective call about did he play. I mean, if he's actually played the ball, that's just a fact, right? But he doesn't. He misses the ball. Did he deliberately try to kick the ball or not? I think that's a debate because I didn't think he did. So I was kind of expecting the referee to be sent over to make a judgment call on that, but that didn't happen, and they just told him that no, he's offside, and the referee disallowed it. But yeah, there are conversations. They're all linked into each other, right? So there's lots of conversations that are taking place. Sometimes that's why it takes so long. Right?
Okay.
With the semi-automatic, sorry,
go on, Steve.
I'm going to say, how would the semi-automatic system work in that situation there?
So that would have confirmed his position of offside a lot quicker, so they wouldn't have had to check and draw the lines. It would have just told him that you're offside. Still, then you've got to have a conversation about
deliberate.
Yeah, it's just confirming the position. Now, if someone who's played the ball, if it was a guy at the back post, and we were talking about is he offside, but he goes to play the ball, so the semi-automated offside is a lot quicker then because he's done something so clearly, obviously, that he has to be penalised. In this case, it's not clear because he doesn't play the ball, so that's what then causes the discussion. So semi-automated offside would have made it a bit quicker, and it also would have reduced the 3 minutes they took to check the guy at the back post because that's what took all the time. They were drawing the lines. Is the guy at the back post offside or not? However, I don't know when semi-automated offside is coming in because it's taken a lot longer than we thought. I suspect it won't be this season now because what we have seen in some other leagues, I think in Europe possibly as well, there was a goal with Lewandowski. I think it was in La Liga though, where the technology just failed and there were two players quite close to each other. And what was the defender's boot, semi-automated technology, had interpreted it as Lewandowski's boot. So it gave him offside when you can clearly see that wasn't offside. So there are problems with it. And because of all of this sort of stuff, and we're very sensitive in England to VAR and quite critical of it, they don't want to bring it in when there's the risk of those errors happening still. So it's still going through these testing phases. It's in lots of leagues, but the Premier League refused to bring it in until those errors are sorted out. So I don't know when it's going to happen, but it wouldn't surprise me now if it won't be this season.
Yeah, I'm going to do something here that is probably going to be a bit of a shock to Stocky because it could potentially back up the officials here. Do you know when you said the processing of checking who was offside was the wrong way round? Do you not think they've done that thinking that if we check the goal scorer and he's off, Armstrong's no longer even relevant?
Yeah, that's true. And also he plays the ball, right? So there's no argument about the guy at the back post. But also what is clear, this is what they'll be discussing when they meet this week about what was the better way round. There are arguments both ways. But what we can see straight away here is that the guy in the middle is clearly the one who's much more further forward, right? So it's always going to be if you check the guy that they flagged off and he's offside, you don't need to check the other one. Whereas if you'd have checked the guy at the back post, I suppose if he is offside, but if he's not, you've then got to go and check the second one. So there's pros and cons either way. But I imagine the Premier League as a group, the referees group, will literally be discussing that this week. Going, was that the best way round, and trying to learn for the next time as to which order they should check them in.
Okay, fair enough. I said we'd get back to Brian's question, but I think we've kind of dragged on a bit with the chat in there. But don't worry, Brian, tune in next week. We've got 2 West Ham games before then. He could not even be their manager anymore, and we'll get even more out of Stocks then. So let's see how that goes. But boys, anything to plug before we sign off?
No, I've got nothing to plug.
Nothing. Well, you can potentially catch me and Stocks on a Sunday evening or Where the Owl Sleep. We're getting a little bit of copyright issues at the minute, so we're going to have to adjust our intro and outro to make sure they stay up. But we will be back 8:00 Sunday evenings. Where the Owl Sleep. Chris, where can people find you?
Yeah, just on Twitter, mate, at Spurs CC. I haven't got anything to plug, but I'm meeting Teddy Sheringham on Thursday evening, so I'll send you guys some pictures of me with the living legend, the living Spurs and West Ham legend that is Teddy Sheringham.
Oh, wicked! Enjoy.
Yeah, I bet you could drink.
We'll see. I'm taking a Spurs shirt for him to sign, but I can't imagine there'll be too many West Ham shirts there. But you never know.
Yeah, maybe.
Right, thanks for those who tuned in. Great input from those in the chat as well. Hopefully catch you another time, boys. Who wants to sign us out? Stock, are you going to attempt it again?
Nope, I can't deal with Marlon's moaning for weeks on end.
That's it then. Nice one, guys. See you all next week.
See you later, everyone.
See you later, guys.